we are about to stop valuing media in a way that I don't really think people are aware of, or perhaps haven't really considered just how quickly something that a couple of years ago would have been very valuable to us all is about to become completely worthless. And what made me think of this was I saw a picture this week that was AI generated, but it looked virtually identical to a picture that I saw in a meme about, maybe it's 10 years old, the meme.
Right.
And the meme is one of my friends. Shout out to James Osborne. James Osborne loves this meme. Maybe I can actually find it for you. So about 10 years ago, a picture popped up on the internet, and it's of like a dog, and the dog has an unusually human-like face, and it was called like the dog-faced man. Dog-faced man, or the man-faced dog meme. Maybe I can bring it up. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so it's fucking great. So the internet is barking up a storm about this dog with an incredibly human face. So this is from 2018. So it's obviously a funny enough thing that People magazine have thought this is very valuable. So we're going to do a story about it. So John, I'm just going to send it to you there, and I'll bring it up on the screen now, right?
Okay, great.
So that's, shout out to James. James loves.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's unsettling. Oh my God.
Yeah, human-like face.
It's got lips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's doing something to my brain.
Yeah. So that's from 2018. Now, this week, I saw a video that somebody had generated using AI that was also of a dog that had a very human-like face. And I was struck by the fact that when James showed me this, I thought, this is amazing. I'm having a big laugh. I'm enjoying this. And suddenly somebody's presenting me with the exact same type of image. It's photorealistic, the AI generated one. And I was just struck thinking, we're about to just stop caring about any photograph ever taken, because if somebody now shows me a man-faced dog, I'm just going to go, somebody's just made that in a computer with a sentence. I no longer value this.
Yeah.
People magazine is not going to write a photograph about a man-faced dog if we can all generate a man-faced dog within seconds. Similarly, I saw a picture, another meme this week, and it was a meme. You might have seen the meme where people use the expression, "What if we kissed under the," and it's some like it's some kind of what would you say? It's usually an ugly environment or a weird campy environment.
Yeah, like some kind of architectural oddity or something like that.
What if we kissed under the garbage heap behind the Costco's, and then somebody will just show the picture of the garbage heap behind the Costco's. And what it was what I'm fairly certain is an AI generated image, and it said, what if we kissed under the Brutalist KFC? And it was a big Brutalist building, and then on the Brutalist concrete building there was the KFC logo, and to my eye there's no way that it was ever a KFC, but the value in the meme is thinking that it is, like, it wants people to think it's a real building, but it's not. And so 10 years ago, when that was a real thing, when it was really a Brutalist KFC, you're going to share it with all your friends. You're going to think, wow, this is so interesting. And now I go, that's not interesting. It's not real.
Yeah.
Somebody just made it. It has no value. And and then lastly, last example.
No, please.
Maybe I can bring this up on the screen as well. A friend of mine, Marky, has a piece of artwork in her house at the moment, which I think is from a photography exhibition from like 5 years ago. And it's just an image of a woman's face, and the artist or the photographer had placed all these like half sliced lemons around her head. And again, back then you would think, wow, that's really cool and interesting. And the photographer went to the effort of doing all this. And that image in particular can right now be made in seconds in AI, like a woman with head surrounded by sliced lemons. And so what value now does anything like that have? And what is about to
Yeah.
happen when a photograph that used to be taken and have incredible lighting and composition, oh, look at the way the shadow comes up, the sun is there and the shadow's there, and they've captured the motion of the person.
Yeah.
What is about to happen when you can't tell if any of that is real anymore?
Yeah.
How do we value any media going forward?
Yeah. And not just like value it as in, can we believe that it's real, but also like, is it aesthetically satisfying to look at it? You know, like I think about these two people that I've followed recently on Instagram. One of them is named Melissa Scott Miller and one of them's named Jeff Bourgeot. And Melissa, I followed because I was presented with one of her paintings, and it was of Islington, where I used to live, and had this beautiful painting that she had done of Regent's Canal and this particular part where it goes into a bridge and there's a walkway leading up to these old Georgian houses. And it just reminded me of being there because I've been in that exact spot. And I wrote to her a bit of reach out hygiene and said, is there somewhere I can buy your stuff? Because it's really lovely and it reminds me of my time in London and blah, blah, blah. And she said, that's very kind of you. And it was nice. And so, you know, I continued to follow her work, and really, it really affects me because it's kind of got this nostalgic quality and reminds me of that time. And then there's this other artist named Jeff Bourgeot, and his work is also beautiful, and it kind of cuts across a variety of different artistic styles. And I don't want to, you know, accuse him of being less than forthright, but in the description of the image, rather than saying something like oil on canvas or acrylic on canvas or whatever, watercolor, it would just say that it was available as a print in such and such dimensions, and it would cost you this much. And so I thought it's interesting because it definitely had the look of something that had been hand painted or sometimes hand drawn, depending on the picture that he was putting out. And so I messaged him, and initially I didn't hear back, and then I messaged again, or I commented actually on one of his paintings and said, how did you do the original painting? And he said it's actually computer generated, and went into quite a lot of detail about how he's been doing this computer generated stuff for years, and, you know, using different techniques and blah, blah, blah. And it was interesting because the fact that he felt obliged to go into that level of detail made me think, consciously or not, he was trying to, you know, to reassure me that what he was doing was imbued with a kind of craftsmanship, that he wasn't just punching in a request and getting a result. And, you know, I mean, and that does matter to me. And it's weird that it matters in a way, because you would think at one level, well, if I like the result, who cares? But so much of what we care about is the provenance. And even knowing that he'd put a lot of, you know, work into it and applied different filters and used different tools or whatever, to be honest, I would still prefer to have something that somebody had done by hand, even if the visual result was identical. And it just made me think about how much of our appreciation of imagery and music, I mean, you could say the same thing about songs that AI is going to end up producing, comes back to knowing that it's been, you know, that it's come from processes that we understand, that it's come from somebody's mind rather than being augmented by machinery, etc. And then I thought, well, is this just like, you know, I mean, people started using computers to make elements of art decades ago, and maybe people turned their nose up at it then. Is this just like the next evolution of that? And eventually we'll kind of find a way of distinguishing good art from bad art, even if it's all fucking made by Bing or whatever, you know, like,
but I bet, John, the interesting thing about what you said there is you've said you had one artist who it was a painting she'd painted.
Yeah.
All right. So she completely painted in a traditional artist way that we've been doing for hundreds of years. She painted this thing. And then the next guy has said a little bit of this or all of it was generated with a computer, but I did all of these things. I used all of this
Yeah.
craftsmanship to manipulate it in the way that I wanted
Yeah.
to create this unique thing. And then you had a reaction
Yeah.
to that. And I would bet that your reaction to him is informed very much by where we are now and not by where we were 10 years ago. So if you'd had that same interaction 10 years ago and he said, well, a little bit of it's computer generated and I used Photoshop and I did this, you would go, man, that is so much craftsmanship that's still involved in the process, and I don't know how you did that. Like you've used
Yeah.
Photoshop to create something really different and interesting. Whereas
Yeah.
now, in the era where you yourself are using these AI image generators, suddenly your reaction to his
Yeah.
response is very different to
Yeah.
what it would have been 10 years ago. And in fact, also just
true.
to highlight this, I have also seen around in the last year, particularly the last 6 months, I've been to friends of mine's houses who have bought art over the last, let's say, 20 years. And that is art that was made with the assistance of or entirely in Photoshop. And it's the kind of
Right.
art that at the time they bought it, they would have known full well, oh, yeah, it's like computer art. But it will
Yeah.
have held a
Yeah.
certain value because of the amount of craftsmanship and skill
Yes.
that it previously took. But I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I go to these people's houses now and I look at this art and it looks like shit. Like, because it just looks like something that your 3-year-old could do in Midjourney or Bing within seconds. It's crap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's weird that this art, that Photoshop Photoshop art for the last 20 years, anything that involved computers, even though for 20 years we thought this is great, suddenly this weird thing has happened where anything that has touched a computer, we're all just
Yeah.
going now, well, I feel very differently about this than I did 10
Yeah.
years ago. I don't I
Yeah.
personally I'm feeling like I don't want
Yeah.
shit that looks like somebody's cut and pasted images out of Photoshop and put them on. It just looks tacky suddenly. Within the last
Yeah.
6 months,
Yeah.
this kind of stuff looks really tacky.
Yeah, that's interesting. So even stuff that predates
Yeah.
generative AI, you sort of look at it in a new way because we're kind of slightly sickened by the capacity of generative AI to produce these things. And there is some, like I've been, as you know, I've fallen into a Bing hole of producing of using my 15 tokens a day to produce what is it, Copilot designer images, and yeah, I mean there is a skill involved of a kind in maybe giving it the right request, but it's not really. It's like nothing.
If somebody
like-
if somebody has their whole house filled with
Yeah.
framed Bing images, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, a bit sick. And the thing is, it was producing images, some of which I was like, and I sent one to you, which was like a swamp. Then I'd said, I want a mangrove swamp at sunset with, kingfishers and giant snails and fish and maybe a crocodile in the background. So it did this, and it looked beautiful and looked very, very realistic, but also kind of fantastical and extremely beautifully lit. And yeah, I just felt, I was kind of amazed by it, but also, had that sort of uncanny valley reservation of like knowing this is just something following, blindly following its programming.
Yeah.
There's no appreciation of beauty that has led to the creation of this image. It just knows this is what I will regard as attractive.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like, I mean, I guess computer generated art's always made me feel a bit that way, but it's also had, and you're right, I probably would look at it differently now, but it's also had at least someone mucking around with tools and stuff, whereas this is just devoid of any, except for the person programming AI, devoid of any human hand or mind.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's beautiful just makes me feel like I'm being manipulated mostly.
I looked up the definition of value on the internet for this specifically. So definition, value, noun, the regard that something is held to deserve the the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. And then it uses the example, your support is of great value. So, yeah, so it calls into question what do we value in things? What do we value in art? Because as I'm saying to you, I'm now having a very visceral reaction to this stuff where I do not value it like I do, like I have art or even digital art for the last 10 years. And then
totally.
So I can imagine that what's going to start happening is that people are going to, for status reasons, people that can afford it, will only have physical paintings in their homes, and wealthy people will just have no prints of anything in their homes. They'll only have like collages, things you can touch, physical paintings,
installations. Sculpture
will be fine.
It's always been the way though, right? I mean, you kind of prints have always been less expensive, obviously, than the original. Even though, I mean, a print might be actually more impressive to look at. Like if you actually look at the original Mona Lisa, it's pretty uninspiring. But and it's maybe it's degraded, whereas a print might pick up on its qualities better. And yet, because it doesn't have that story attached to it, because it's not the thing, because it's not like, or to use another example, because it's not like, well, it's not, the sunflowers that Van Gogh kind of strenuously slapped layers and layers of paint onto. That story is not attached to it. So even though it's the same image, I don't want it as much. But I'll still appreciate the print because it's still that print. It's still Van Gogh's work in a different sense. Whereas this is not really anyone's work. And it just looks beautiful, but, it's not attached to any story of creation that we would attach value to because it's not a human story. Yeah. And I don't know where that leaves us. I mean, it's reminding me of that scene in Blade Runner where they have the guy who runs that corporation, Tyrell Corporation, has an owl flittering around his office, and it's really beautiful. And I think it must be Harrison Ford asks if it's real, and he says, "Of course it's not." And it's kind of like. It's like, for it to be real, it would need to be like an incredible find. Whereas, everyone's just kind of satisfied with mimicry. But equally, if you just wanted pretty paintings in your house, I assume that they'll be much more affordable you can just make one yourself, print it out from Bing.
We can, maybe.
I want a beautiful landscape in the style of Monet.
Yeah.
And then, it'll probably look pretty good, and you just print it out.
Perhaps
stick a frame around it.